It looks like Evans is going to get Mauricio Shogun Hua. That was promised to him. No reason he wouldn't get it. What do you think of that fight? And I'm seeing early odds offshore at -250 for Hua.
Yeah, I find that really hard to believe that Shogun would be a 2-to-1 favorite, better than a 2-to-1 favorite. I mean, to my way of thinking, Steve, I mean, this is a 7-to-5, 8-to-5 type of fight. You know, I think Shogun deserves to be the favorite, certainly, but you know, I think that is way too big of a number.
Okay, how do you think the fight will play out?
You know, I think it's going to be an interesting fight. Evans' wrestling is going to play a big factor, and it's certainly Shogun's Muay Thai skills are going to be also a factor. I think the speed and quickness of Evans is a factor, just like it was against Rampage Jackson. I would lean, as we stand right now, toward Rashad Evans to win the fight. But this is one of the ones, again, that, you know, I think we have to see them in camp, spend a little time, you know, and I'd reserve the right to change my mind, but talking to you now in the early weeks of June, just a couple of days after Rashad fought Rampage, you know, I would lean toward Rashad.
I've had some people on Twitter griping endlessly about Evans and his fight style, saying that that's not a guy that Dana White should be pushing. Is that a little too harsh?
Well, I mean, you know, I think that those are people that are not fans of the moving defensive style that Evans, you know, uses. I mean, you know, I got a lot of criticism in some quarters for my post-fight column after UFC 114, where I said that I didn't think the main event delivered, and people said, well, that's exactly what everybody thought Rashad would do, and I agree. That's what I thought he would do too. But, you know, that doesn't mean it's the most exciting style and it's backing up the trash talk. But I think, you know, it's too much to say, hey, you know, you shouldn't promote this guy if just because he, you know, fights a certain style. You know what? It's up to the opponent to make him adjust. And, you know, in the case of UFC 114, where was Rampage? Rampage had a chance for 15 minutes to do something about it, and he really didn't. There have been guys who got their hands on Rashad Evans before. It's not like he's been in like Lyoto Machida was. Machida, he's only hit one shot. Evans had hit, and Rampage just wasn't able to hit him. So, you know, I mean, I don't buy that. I think it's one of those things that, you know, it's the same thing in combat sports. It's a game of adjustments, and it's a game of styles. And, you know, people are going to have to adjust to the style that Evans is using right now.
You know, the other impression out of the post-fight, and again, Rampage is one of these guys. I mean, literally, it's day to day he changes. He may love UFC today. Tomorrow he says blank him, and I love the movies. And now he's going on this movie tour. What do you think the future holds for him? Because clearly he gets it. He can't do both at the same time, and especially be great as a fighter.
I'm starting to wonder if he has a long future as a fighter. Like, Quentin's never really loved to train, Steve. I mean, he's been a guy that, you know, has gotten by on natural talent and sort of, you know, he was just a big, strong guy, and he had a lot of ability, and he would just, you know, he was like a grizzly bear. He would just, you know, overwhelm you. And, you know, right now it's like, you know, he's getting to be a bigger, slower, less threatening grizzly bear. You know, maybe instead of one you run into in the wild, one you run into in the zoo. And, you know, it's certainly, you know, they're a lot less threatening, I think. You know, I have never climbed over one of their cages, but, you know, but I think Quentin is just not the same. You know, he doesn't have the same hunger. And the fight game is one, you know, you really have to want to fight. And if you don't have that same hunger and that same drive and that same push, you know, we saw him, and he kept talking during the preview show, Primetime, about how hard he was training. But when you looked at his face always had that fleshy, big look to it. Didn't look, you know, even on the last couple episodes, like, you know, you could see this huge cut. So I wonder, I wasn't there every day in camp, but, you know, you wonder how hard he was pushing himself. And even if he did increase the amount that he worked, you know, that just talks about what he was doing in the past. He wasn't doing enough. You know, so I don't think Quentin is really going to be around a heck of a long time.
So with that sense of urgency, if he does choose fighting and get back to it full time, you would think he'll want Machida. How do you think he does in that fight if he gets Machida?
Personally, I think Machida would be a big favorite and would win the fight. You know, I saw the Rashad fight, and I don't see Machida being any easier for Rampage to catch than Rashad was. Certainly, you know, Rampage would have the ability to knock Machida out, and if he caught him, you know, I think he would be able to knock him out because I think he's a harder puncher than Shogun. But having said that, you know, I think that Quentin's going to have the same trouble. You know, Machida's going to be very elusive. He's going to multiple weapons, whereas Rampage is going to have one weapon, you know, right there, and that's going to be it. And, you know, that in today's UFC, in today's sport of MMA, unless you're much, much, much better physically than the other guy, and in this case he would not be, you don't win.
So I've seen that our Dave Meltzer was saying, you know, Machida and Jackson is not exactly set in stone. Maybe little Nog could slip in there and fight Jackson. Is there a possibility that Dana White goes with the philosophy, hey, I've got two marketable guys here, Machida and Jackson. Let's let them repair their image, build them back up, give them a fight against someone lesser, and then maybe they fight down the road?
Well, part of the reason Joe Silva's a good matchmaker is he can take a look and see what styles mesh together well, because there are certain styles that mesh and certain that don't. I think Little Nog and Rampage would be a more action fight. Sure, you know, he does have a ground game, but certainly, you know, I mean, he's a guy that likes to bet. You know, I think that that you wouldn't get people booing because they would be throwing at each other. You know, a Machida fight would be a more tactical fight. So I certainly think there's something to that. You know, Joe Silva, you know, is very astute when it comes to looking and kind of projecting how guys are going to fight each other. You know, sometimes you get surprised, but Joe's usually pretty good at that. And if he does go decide, hey, I want to have a more fan-friendly fight, I think he would go in the direction of Rampage and Nog as opposed to Machida and Rampage.
Now, the only pothole there is if Rampage has already had some motivational issues and was saying, you know, with Jackson, he didn't even think he should fight Jackson, is he going to get fired up and bring his best for Little Nog?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously an issue, and I know he wants to fight Forrest in the worst way. You know, he wants to avenge, I think there's a number of guys who would like to get their hands on Forrest. You know, I think Rampage wouldn't mind fighting Forrest, and, you know, that's another possibility. If Forrest comes off that surgery and is okay, you know, maybe they match Rampage with him. Give Rampage what he wants, give him a chance to avenge the loss